Hi, I'm Barbara Chris.
And I'm Clarissa,
We're two friends, entrepreneurs, and experts in our field.
joining forces and talking all about life, business, tools for success, and more.
So, without further ado, here's to Dope Women.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Here's to Dope Women. I'm Clarissa. This is my beautiful co-host, Barbara.
Hey.
And we are here to talk about self-sabotage today. I think this is something that definitely a lot of people can relate to. We're going to talk about where it falls in with our lives. And we are also going to give you some tips and tricks on how to kind of overcome it. And I'm excited about this because, I mean, it kind of fell into my life this morning, just hitting the snooze button. So
Oh, did it really? Yeah, it's so interesting because I think that sometimes we hear about self-sabotage and it just sounds like this fancy thing that we're like, oh, I don't ever deal with that. But like you and I were sharing, we battle with it ourselves, and we've been battling with it like in different levels too, like at different aspects of our life. It doesn't just stick to one thing. It could be like career stuff, health and weight stuff, or relationship stuff. It like can hit all different areas of our lives.
definitely. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like it's something too that's just multifaceted too. So it's good to identify it so that way you can be a little bit more aware so you can kind of, do things to correct it. Right.
Right. Yeah, because a lot of times you don't even realize that you're doing it. It's not like we're purposely trying to like take ourselves out or, help ourselves fail or not do the things that we want to do. A lot of times we don't even realize that we're doing it. So like I wrote down because I've done and I talked to my clients about this quite a bit, like self-sabotage. And of course, like you and I were saying, like we deal with it ourselves too. And I wanted to just share just quickly, like what is self-sabotage in a kind of generic or general way. And it's essentially when we do, or oftentimes don't do, things that block our success or prevent us from accomplishing our goals. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing things. It can also mean when we don't do things that actually help us get to our goals. That makes sense?
Definitely. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Because it's almost like to me, when I think of self-sabotage, it's you're kind of staying in your comfort zone.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yes.
Staying in your comfort zone, you're not wanting to kind of venture out because
Hmm.
of, vulnerability or maybe insecurity or things like that. There was actually a quote that I heard the other day that it's comfort creates um what is it? Comfort creates self-care, but discomfort creates self-respect.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. And I think it was Jay
Yes.
Shetty that said that. And to
Yes.
me, definitely you have to get out of your comfort zone in order to really grow as a person. Right.
Hmm.
But I mean, people just they procrastinate, they self-sabotage, and they just are stuck and they're not able to go where they want to go.
Yeah. I like how you shared that quote. And there's another thing that I actually did like on one of my Instagram stories. I put it out there with my friends, followers, and I said, when you think about self-sabotage, do you think of it as it's a fear of success, or is it a fear of failure? And the majority of people answer, oh, it's a fear of failure. Gosh, that's a tongue twister. And really what the research says is that it's fear of success, that we self-sabotage ourselves, right? Because we're maybe from past history or just how things have gone in, historically for us, that we failed, let's say in, throw it out there, let's say weight loss, right? Like we've historically failed. So we're really familiar with what it feels like to fail in that area. So self-sabotage, it's kind of like just aligning in our head with the way we're thinking of ourselves in our head with our behavior. So it's like we're just kind of subconsciously self-sabotaging and keeping ourselves from that success of weight loss because we're so used to kind of failing or falling short, maybe is a better way, falling short in that area. That was something that when I came across that, I was like, that is really enlightening, that it's not so much a fear of failing. It's many times we're just not used to the success part. And so we're more familiar with kind of falling short. And then we kind of stay in that comfort zone, exactly like you said.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, fear of success. It's
Hmm.
basically maybe you're not feeling like you deserve to be successful. Say you failed at so many things that you're like,
Hmm.
well, maybe this just isn't right for me. Maybe I don't deserve to be successful because I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough, drive. I don't have enough motivation,
Hmm.
and it's like really you're as happy as you deserve to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you feel like you like deserve happiness, then you're going to be happy. But if you don't feel like you deserve success, then you're
Right.
not going to be successful.
Yeah, it was this interesting thing I was reading also, same thing about trying to find that balance between the way that we see ourselves or how we believe and perceive ourselves and what like the outside, what our behaviors are doing. If those things are out of balance, like you said, like if we don't really deserve, or I should say, let's say we want success, but we're in our head, we're thinking, well, I really want success, but maybe just this much, X amount, not like so much that's out of control. That's just so big that I know I'm not like worthy of that, but just a little bit of success that we tend to match our behaviors or make our behaviors match the way we see ourselves because it's so much easier to change or manipulate our behavior versus like doing the inside work and adjusting the way we see ourselves and really start to believe in no, I believe I deserve all that and this all the success, just limitless success, right? That's really hard to really get in our brains and our minds to truly believe that about ourselves. So they talk about how there's this when our those two things, the outside world and the way we see ourselves are out of balance, that it's a lot easier for us to tweak those behaviors to match our self-doubt and all that.
Yeah, yeah, makes total sense. So
Mhm.
I know that you have a couple of I don't know, examples or just forms of self-sabotage.
Mhm.
You want to
Yeah, what
share
it looks
those?
like. Yeah, so I mean to cut you off. So yeah, I went through and I was looking at the most common when you think about self-sabotage, like what are some of the common examples? And this first one, I'm sure like everybody's gonna be like, oh hell yes, that's exactly what I do all the time. And it's procrastination, right? And if you think about some of the things that we just talked about right now about staying in our comfort zone or fear of failure, feeling like if I put all my eggs into this, let's say, goal that I'm going after and I fall short, man, I'm going to look so stupid to everybody, or I'm just, how embarrassing that's going to be. So we procrastinate, we put it off. It's a form of self-sabotage. So that's a common one. Another one is we were talking about this the other day, like struggling with healthy relationships. That many times, let's say, if you're used to, being in relationships that maybe aren't the most healthy, maybe there's some toxic traits about them that you tend to be more familiar with those toxic traits or unhealthy type dynamic, then you tend to sort of kind of fall into that pattern, over and over. That oftentimes when, let's say, you're in a healthy relationship or something that seems to be going good, and you're like, wait a minute, isn't it about time for some like shit to go down? Like, you know what I mean? That's what you're
Yeah.
used to. So right there, we can talk about more, but when you hear about those two, or when I mentioned those two, do any of those like resonate with you?
Oh, for sure. I mean,
Mm.
just like I said in the very beginning, to me, hitting the snooze button is a form of procrastinating, of getting
Mhm.
out of bed. And I mean, I've been really trying to work on just getting up out of bed earlier. So
Mhm.
what I'll do is I'll set my alarm for earlier, but then I'll just keep hitting the snooze button. And that to me is like my one of my worst, habits
Yeah.
that I've made. And it's just hard. It's really hard. It's hard because I don't go to bed earlier. So like really it's like I need to go to bed earlier so that way I can wake up earlier. I
Mhm.
mean, I also my dog, I have a 16-year-old Chihuahua that wakes me up 14 times a night.
Yeah.
So I also don't get very good sleep either. I mean, if I were to like wear a, sleep tracking, thing or whatever,
Mhm.
it would tell me I'm getting horrible sleep. And it's just I feel like I'm like that every night. I mean, I can't tell you when the last time was that I slept through the night. It was probably when I was on vacation,
Mhm.
when I didn't have her. But
Yeah.
she gets up and she's, walking around and then I kind of get all, nervous because I'm like, oh, I
Mhm.
got to take her outside or, she wants water or she's gonna fall off the bed or something.
Yeah.
So anyway, so my biggest thing with self-sabotage is, procrastination of just hitting the snooze button every morning and not
Yeah.
getting up and not doing the things that I want to do. Like
Mhm.
I want to do a workout before going to work or I want to, make myself breakfast.
Yeah.
Things like that.
What about relationship stuff? I mean, it could be like business, friendships, personal relationships. They when they talk about if you're used to like a certain kind of traits, as far as like healthy or unhealthy relationships. And I was actually, when I was thinking about that one, and I was thinking about like business and friendships and those types of relationships, and how, you and I were talking about like, like loyalty and, integrity, and when you work with other people. And I, it was kind of a hard lesson learned that I found myself, because I believe I'm very loyal and have a strong work ethic. And many times, I think, as far as like some self-sabotage, is that when I would see, in like for me, like maybe red flags or things that weren't quite, working with what I felt like, as far as, respecting me and my role in certain things, I would kind of like bite my tongue, for the sake of like, oh, for like the team or whatever. But then what was happening is I was keeping myself from like stepping into, like you were saying, like, and I deserve better. Like I deserve a partnership that's mutually respectful, and mutually like driven and committed the way I am. And I was like self-sabotaging myself, thinking like, no, making excuses, maybe procrastinate dealing with like the hard conversation. And I, eventually just got to this point where like I think the good people in my life, in my corner, were kind of like pointing some things out to me and sort of pushing me like, hey, you gotta stand up for yourself. You gotta step out of your comfort zone and into your, like, I don't know, maybe sounds cliche, more of your power. I mean, for sure. And it's like crazy, because I'm thinking at that time, I was already like 45, grown woman, and still dealing with these not little, these aspects of self-sabotage, like totally happening.
For sure. I mean, when it comes to you, I feel like you are a very loyal person and you do have a great work ethic. But definitely, I think that maybe loyalty sometimes can get in the way of your growth and you can almost self-sabotage. Like it sounds bad because loyalty is a very good trait, but it can
Yeah.
definitely keep you in certain situations longer than you should. Relationships, business
Mhm.
relationships, friendships. A form of self-sabotage is staying in something just because of the time that you've put into it, right? Well, I've been working with this person for 5 years. I don't want to just, give
Mhm.
that up. Like, I feel like that's just a waste of my time. Or I don't want to, I feel like my relationship, I've been in this relationship for 20 years. I don't want
Right.
to just like feel like that was just a waste of time. So people will
Mhm.
stay in something that's comfortable, or because they feel like one of their values is loyalty. Like I feel like one of
Yes.
your core values is probably loyalty
Mhm.
and great work ethic.
Yep.
So that will actually keep you staying in those relationships or friendships for way longer than you should. And that is definitely a form of self-sabotage because you're hindering your own growth.
Yeah. There's something when I was kind of working my way through this, this is now a couple years ago now, but I remember coming across not just loyalty and reading and learning about that, but there's something called blind loyalty. And that's not necessarily a good thing. Kind of like you said, loyalty is a good thing. That's a great characteristic. But blind loyalty, that's something else, right? Like you're kind of putting the blinders on and you're not seeing some of the things that are around you, possibly, that are actually negative and or toxic for you. And so, there's got to be, like, again, you stepping into and having, if it is like those hard, difficult well, not even really confrontational, but conversations, right? And to deal with that. And that's the scary part, because you don't know, that's the outcome of those conversations are outside of your control. And so I think that's what I was doing. It was more controlling, or it was better for me to just feel like, okay, I'm not going to say anything, because I know if I don't say anything, how things will be, for the most part,
Mhm.
right? If I speak up, then who knows what the results are going to be, and can I handle those results? And yeah, eventually just got to the point where it was like, not only am I going to handle it, but I know I can. But that was something that I had to like learn and practice. And I went through a lot of self-doubt doing that too. So that certainly isn't something that's just, I mean, I get it. It's scary to do stuff like that. It's not, you're gonna just be like, it's no problem. I'm gonna confront everybody that I want to confront, and no problem. It's scary. It's a scary step to take.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole blind loyalty, that makes total sense. You're really just kind of focusing on all of the good things and not focusing on, okay, like what's not right about this situation, and
Hmm.
does the bad outweigh the good, and what do I do? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Some other forms of self-sabotage, a real common one is overeating. I think I mentioned that, obviously I talk a lot about this with my clients, and how many times, like with people who if they're very familiar with diets and maybe struggling with their weight, that many times overeating it's comfortable for them. They're familiar with it, even though they might be, experiencing some success. Again, like when their insides of how they see themselves, if they still see themselves as this person who's been struggling with their weight for 20 years, it's hard to kind of reconcile that with some of the behaviors that they might, let's see, more recently be doing. And when things get stressful or maybe life gets a little bit chaotic, they tend to fall back onto what's familiar, right? I mean, I think that makes sense with a lot of people. When you get stressed, we tend to go back to what's familiar, even if it's not the most healthy or healthful things to do. And so oftentimes overeating, it's a common form of self-sabotage because again, it's like that behavior of what maybe used to be what we did. We're kind of going back to that because it's familiar. It's a familiar place to be, like comfort zone. It's a comfort zone. Even if, let's say, we don't necessarily want it, it's still comfortable and familiar.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely overeat if I'm eating something that's like, comfort food like pasta or something.
Yeah.
That's also, I mean, I guess that's another thing that I can kind of relate to when it comes to my forms of self-sabotage
Mm-hmm.
is I don't necessarily schedule myself a lunch. So then I'll just basically overindulge in the evenings because I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't eaten all day. I'm
Yeah.
starving.
Yeah. And there's some truth to
So
that. Sometimes we just need to do that too, right? Like you're so starving and like, yeah, I don't care what I eat. If I don't eat now, I'm gonna literally want to eat my arm. So we got to like do something about that. But
mhm.
yeah, I mean, so overeating's a big one. And then another one is like, okay, the whole thing with like Netflix and chill, numbing out. They talk about how self-sabotage can be that. I guess it's kind of like a procrastination, a form of procrastination too, but numbing out, whether it's binge watching TV or alcohol, food, that's a way you can numb out, drugs, all kinds of things that we want to basically numb ourselves off from dealing with whatever negative emotion or situation that's kind of there. The self-sabotage can be just the numbing out. I mean, what about you? Do you find, or have you ever caught yourself or found yourself like numbing out and
A thousand
avoiding?
percent. 1,000%. Yes. I mean, I do that, especially when I have a really busy and exhausting day. I mean, you wouldn't think so, but being a hairstylist, my job is very mentally exhausting, you
Yeah.
know? Like yesterday, you were on my schedule. I
Uh-huh.
had two other clients, and it just seemed like every client that I had yesterday, including you, it was just full of conversations and, like that's great, but it's also
Yeah.
every single client. I did that with every single client that day where I'm just like constantly like go, 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 talking, 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 conversation and,
Mm-hmm.
engaging. And for me as kind of a natural introvert, it's at the end of the day, I was so mentally exhausted. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, I'm also doing hair. So it's like I'm like doubling up on like I'm having to engage in the conversation, but I'm also having to
Right.
really pay attention to what I'm doing because I could also mess up someone's hair.
Like,
I can mess up someone's formulation.
yeah.
So, anyways, I'm like totally going off on a whole other thing. But if I have a very busy day where I'm very mentally and physically exhausted, instead of going home and working out and cooking food, I go
Mm.
home and I do takeout and I don't work out. And all I want to do is just sit on my couch and just watch TV and literally numb out because
Yeah.
I'm so exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that happens to me all the time. And so it's either I got to just have that second cup of coffee at 5 or 6 p.m. just to get me through the evening.
Yeah.
Um, or, just something. I really got to find that motivation to kind of just like, no, don't sit down, do this, do that, set yourself up for success for the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh my God. Okay. So as far as like numbing out and anything, all that stuff, hell yeah. I mean, because they're like you too, like oftentimes I'm listening to clients and coaching clients, and I love doing that. But sometimes it can take its toll, right? Especially if, let's say, they're going through a lot of like negative or, negative emotion. We're kind of working through that. That's a part of my job. I love doing that. I love helping people break through. But you're right. Like at the end of the day, if I've gone through, handful or more, sometimes I'll have just however my schedule will fall into place, like literally hour after hour, have a client. And by the end of the day, I'm just like, oh my God, like I'm so wiped out. I can't even like think straight. I just want to numb out. And I believe sometimes, not to like make an excuse or for it or anything, but sometimes I think we do need to kind of like just check out just to kind of like catch our, get our bearings straight. But there are times that I will catch myself where I start to like really take on a lot of that negative emotion. And then what I do find, which is not good, is then I start it's almost like I start questioning myself for whatever reason. Like a lot of that negative emotion starts to like become negative self-talk. That's not good, right? And I start catching myself. Oh, you heard my dogs? Yeah. Yeah. So just side note, the doors there close for a reason because my dogs, if they come in here, it will become an absolute circus. So they're like literally always right outside that door, ready to bark. But anyway, so I take on this negative emotion and then I catch myself if I'm not careful, I will catch myself. That becomes like negative self-talk about myself. Like, well, like, why are they struggling so much? Is it my fault? Am I doing something wrong as a coach? And blah, blah, blah. And then rather than like kind of dealing with that, I'll just want to zone out, not even deal, just totally like, no, I'm not even going to think about it. I'm going to watch my Dateline and murder mystery,
Yeah.
marathon, and I'm good for a while. So I totally do that for sure.
And I mean, I feel like there's definitely a big difference between taking the time that you need,
Hmm.
right? Like if you're, say on Sundays, like that's your day for some self-care. I'm
Yeah.
gonna do a face mask and I'm gonna, like just maybe not do, stuff that's like super productive where it's
Hmm.
like you really need that relaxation.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you're doing it every single day after work, if every single day after work you're just coming home and you're eating, crappy food because you don't want to make something healthy or you don't want to buy something healthy and
Hmm.
you're just sitting on your couch every single night, then that's where the difference is, where it's self-sabotage. I think there's a big difference between the self-sabotage, just vegging out and numbing out and
Yep.
actually really taking the time to
Yes.
do some self-care. I see you because
I
I know that you do that.
I know. So guilty.
I know that you're guilty of that, where
Totally.
you're just like work, work, work. And then if you feel like, you're relaxing, you get those guilty feelings coming in because I
Yep.
feel those too, definitely.
Yeah, so then it brings on this other topic, which we've talked about it before, but they say how self-sabotage, another form of it, what it looks like, it's the imposter phenomenon.
Mm,
So that people like we feel that we're somehow imposters in what we're doing or how we're seeing ourselves, and so we self-sabotage. And it's such a big one, right? Because you and I we were talking about this, how especially as entrepreneurs, like you can have a kick-ass month, right? And then, but in your head, you start catching yourself saying things like, well, yeah, it was a great month, but whatever thing or excuse or random ass thing that we'll think as far as like a negative comment, like, well, that just means that next month it's going to kind of suck. So, who knows if I can keep this up for 2 months in a row or 3 months in a row or 5 months in a row, whatever it is. We like just constantly are taking ourselves off at the knee as opposed to being like, yeah, I earned that. And I did some great things. I've pivoted my business to make these changes. And rather than focusing on, okay, I'm going to keep focusing on that and that, because that was really a good thing that I did. Many times we're quick to say, well, that was just kind of like a fluke. Like
sure,
who
for
knows if it's going
sure.
to happen again? Who knows? I mean, what
Yeah.
about you?
Well, I mean, I was listening to something about self-sabotage the other day, and it was really about people self-sabotage their own happiness because I don't know if they just like feel guilty for being too
Mm,
happy, right? It's like, oh, I have all these clients. I'm so booked, I'm so busy, and it's like, and you're constantly, like you said before, you're constantly thinking about the negative of like, oh, well, I'm really busy this week and next week, but I mean, it's going to even itself out at the end of the month because I'll probably be really slow. It's like, oh, I have all these people coming in, and then it's like it's all their time to come in, and then now I'm going to have a slow season or a slow,
mhm.
break. Um Yeah, definitely. I feel like that happens a lot with me in my business, and
Yeah.
especially with entrepreneurs where it's like you're excited because you're busy and you're making money, but then you're
Yeah.
kind of like, but wait, I don't want to be too excited because what if I get really slow? So it's like
Yes.
you're just constantly in this back and forth where, it's like I feel like you really have to celebrate where you are and celebrate like,
Yeah.
yes, like I'm killing it. Like this is great. Like let's keep this going and let's keep this up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like celebrate that. As opposed to feeling like we have to protect our ego, which is it's like a thing that's tied into this whole self-sabotage thing, is that we do that to sort of protect our ego. Like if we feel we're going to let ourselves down, then we sort of start padding the conversation like, well, like you said, well, next 2 weeks will actually be slow, so I'm not going to get too excited about this because it'll just average out and I'll be whatever my averages has always been, right? You don't want
Uh,
you get excited but only so much because we're like our ego gets in the way of things. And that's, I think, one of the things that I've for sure noticed about myself and, being driven and wanting to be successful is that, many times we have to be our own cheerleaders. And I think that inadvertently when we do that, right, we kind of pad our ego so that we don't get too down on ourselves and then feel like we're just going to stop altogether, rather than celebrating the fact that, yeah, I had a great month or I had a great year or whatever, and just going with that. And then, yeah, if things don't always turn out that way, that's okay too, right? Because you're just learning and you're getting better for that. We don't have to pad it and give it like a almost like a what's the word, like a condition, like, okay, I had a really awesome year, but we got to throw that
but
in there. That doesn't have to be a but. We can just say it is what it is, and like you said, celebrate it.
for sure. And I think also what a lot of people do that is another form of self-sabotage
Hmm.
is they're killing it and it's like great. But say you go on social media and you see someone that is, say for me, a hairstylist, like, oh yeah, I'm killing it. I have clients. I have all these new clients coming in and they're pre-booking and, I'm getting all these new clients. And then I go on social media and then I see a
Mm.
hairstylist that's like a traveling educator and she's killing it. She has all these videos and she's making all this money and she's driving a nice car and blah, blah, blah. So I think another form of self-sabotage to your own happiness is comparing yourselves to others.
Mm, mhm.
Bring
Yeah.
ourselves to others, definitely. I mean, you're sabotaging your own happiness because you're not celebrating yourself and who
Mhm.
you are and your accomplishments that you've already done.
Ooh, that is a good one because I see this in a lot of times with people, especially with nutrition and weight loss, is that, comparing and just being aware of other things is can be a good thing. You're just more informed. But there's a difference between if anything is like different from what you're doing, that if you always feel the need to have to do what somebody else is doing and do it their way, that's not necessarily a good thing. Like you're saying, the comparing part. So for example, like, let's say I'm working with a client and they're doing well. I've got them on their, nutrition plan. They're eating balanced meals, they're getting great, success as far as weight, and maybe their health metrics are improving. And then all of a sudden they read something, they're like, well, what about, you know, intermittent fasting? What about keto? Maybe I should do keto now. And I feel like that many times what gets in the way is that we're not patient enough with ourselves, right? And that we don't, like you said, celebrate the fact that, what I'm doing right now or what I'm doing, I feel good. I'm doing well. There's all these pluses for it, owning that, as opposed to feeling like whatever it is that we're doing is less than. And so I got to figure out what everybody else is doing. That can definitely be a form of self-sabotage too. It's like, no, own what you're doing, and also own the fact that if you're new on your journey, whether it's like as an entrepreneur, business owner, health, relationship, is that you've got to give yourself some patience too to be consistent with things in order to start seeing the results. When we're not patient enough, it's so easy to want to keep like jumping ship, and then nothing will work, right? Because we've got to be consistent. We've got to put in some of the work. We can't expect change and benefits while doing the same thing over and over, like jumping ship over and over, starting something new over and over. We're never going to get to where we want to be. But that was a good one. I'm glad you brought that up. That's really, really a good point for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, I think going back to, just seeing what other people are doing and, oh, well, this is what's working for them. Maybe I should do this and stop what I'm doing. It's
Hmm.
just like, I think that there's some power in really, well, because really I think that it's a natural human nature for
Mm-hmm.
us to want to fit in with other people. That's why people are so gravitated towards what other people are doing. Oh, well, this is
Yeah.
for them. When really, I think that there's something very powerful in owning who you are as an individual. And if you're seeing some sort of success with what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
just because like, getting your clients from social media is working out for someone else. Whereas if you're doing some sort of advertisement over here and it's working for you, like keep doing what you're doing. I mean, yeah, maybe you can try
Right.
something else if it's not working, but if you're doing something and it's working for you, if you're on a diet plan and it's working for you, why would you all of a sudden switch to intermittent fasting?
Yeah. Or just something,
Just
yeah,
because,
just something random because someone said you should do this. You
yeah.
should do this or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I know it's hard for people to do that because they're constantly having this feeling of wanting to fit in with other people.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I think there's something powerful in just kind of staying in who you are and what
Mm.
your gut feeling is telling you.
Yeah, that's actually one of the first steps when they talk about how to deal with self-sabotage or imposter syndrome. All that stuff is self-awareness is really that first step is just realizing one that you're doing it or that you're kind of susceptible to that or maybe finding yourself constantly like questioning yourself, self-doubt, things like that. Just becoming more aware of those things is a starting point because like I said, or we both were saying at the top of this episode how many times it's just we don't even realize we are doing it. Like we don't even realize our thought process is actually self-sabotage. We're just like, this is my normal. This is what I
Hmm.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like, coping strategies, I mean, I don't want to like jump the gun or anything like that, but is there anything else, or before we get into the coping strategies, is there anything else for you that when you think of self-sabotage, whether it's like yourself or like past experiences or maybe people that you like, like what they've struggled with, what it looked like for them, as far as self-sabotage?
I mean, I definitely feel like, for me, another form of self-sabotage is sometimes I overbook myself and I just take on too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know how to like say no sometimes. I mean, I've definitely
Yeah.
gotten really good at it because right now it's like my schedule's so busy. If someone texts me right now, it's like I don't have if someone texts me for a Saturday appointment, I don't have anything for literally like 6 weeks. And I
Yeah.
feel so bad. So I'll try and figure out a way to squeeze them in somewhere else, but then I end up regretting it because I'm just exhausted at the end of the day. So I think
Yeah.
that another form of self-sabotage is just taking on too much and kind of it's like almost like you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
If you're already doing so much and then you take on something else, just out of obligation or something, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
set yourself up for failure. And I feel like that's where you need to be more aware. Like you said, be more
Yeah.
aware of, am I going to hate myself later on for this?
Yeah. Yeah. Or yeah, or you're gonna be doing so much that maybe the things that you want to do or you need to do for yourself don't get done. I think that
Putting
happens a
it,
lot with
yeah.
so many of us because we are so busy and we're juggling so many different priorities that typically when that happens, the first things that fall off the plate are all the things that we want to do and need to do for ourselves to help us feel good and help us feel whole and rejuvenated and all of those things. And yeah, I'm like right there. I'll start to take out some of the things, whether it's free time, taking time for myself. I'll just work, work, work and think, well, I'm being productive, so that's a good enough reason for me to do that. But when I realize that I'm getting burnt out and my creativity's low and, my sleep starts to get impacted because I'm thinking, thinking, thinking all the time, that's not good either. That's a total form of self-sabotage. Right on. I mean, that's
Yeah.
spot on.
Well, I want to get into these coping strategies.
Yeah, right. Okay. So coping strategies, what do you have first off and first and foremost, what stands out or what not stands out, but what can you share as far as a coping strategy for?
Well, definitely. I mean, even though I shared before that I am a procrastinator, something that has
Mm-hmm.
really helped with me, that it's not necessarily a coping strategy, but I guess
Mm-mm.
it's a little trick that you can use to help with procrastination is time blocking. We've talked about this before,
Yeah.
but if you're putting off all these things, if you're putting off, putting laundry away, or if you're putting off, organizing your garage or organizing
Mhm.
your pantry or, going through all this mail or bills that you need to go through, all
Yeah.
those things that like you don't want to do. I think it's a really good thing to do is just time block,
Mhm.
meaning set a timer for say 5-10 minutes. If it's like going through your garage, probably set like an hour.
Mhm.
And what that does is most people is you set that timer and you almost work faster than you would if you didn't because you're on a timer. You're on a
Right.
time limit. And then also too, most people will keep going after that timer's gone off because it's the hardest thing is starting.
Yes. Right.
So most people, when they're going in it, they kind of find a flow and then they end up just kind of continuing. So
Right.
that to me is a pretty good, trick that I've
Yeah.
used before in the past that I think works great.
Yeah, that's a good one also because I think many times when you are procrastinating something that you're just dreading having to do, like we can't see like the end, right? We're just thinking, "Oh my God, I have to do like organize my garage. That's going to take 15 years." Like we just it's just like, "Oh my God, it seems so just like overwhelming." Whereas
Yeah.
like you said, if you give yourself, "Okay, I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to just make a dent in this corner." That's
Hmm.
a lot more like digestible. Like we can accept that. We can say, I can do that. I can give a half an hour to that, filthy ass corner in the garage right now
Yeah.
and be good with it.
Hmm.
For sure, I like that one. I think one that I really, this is something personal for me as far as what's been helping me with self-sabotage and this type of thinking is there's this actually I got to read this quote because it's really good. It ties in with it that things don't have to go my way in order for me to be okay. And the idea here is that we have to, kind of learn to be more flexible or really have an intention of being more flexible, meaning that if we can take off our focus on like trying to control the results, like the end results of things, and just be more present and focus then or more so on like what we do, like what we're our behaviors and our intentions, focusing on that and then kind of letting whatever happens as far as the end result, we don't have control over that, right? And so it's basically the thought process of if we can let go of that and let go of that whatever control and desire to control that that says that, hey, if I partake in this nutrition program, I have to guarantee that I'm going to be down 50 pounds by this time. We got to let that go, right?
Hmm.
Because what happens then if we say to ourselves, well, if I have to control the end result and in my head I know I'm not going to get there, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to self-sabotage so that it does whatever you're thinking actually will happen. I hope that makes sense. I think for me, like because of being driven and wanting to be like successful and just really motivated by that I can catch myself, as far as like, okay, well, I really want as much as possible control the end result, and I can't do that. I have to be able to just put like all my effort and 100% of everything I'm doing and know that, I might get a result that's even better than I even thought of, but I won't know that unless I actually do the damn thing. I don't know. That was a hell of like a roundabout way to say that, but does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Cause also too, I mean, I think that also changing your mindset is a really good thing because a lot of times, everybody's always heard the saying like, "Oh, well, what's the worst that can happen?" Well, that's actually
Mm,
not a good way of thinking it. It's
yeah.
because when you say to yourself, your mind is automatically going to start thinking worst
Mm,
case scenario. What is the worst thing that can happen? And
yeah.
that to me is a form of self-sabotage because when you're saying, well, what's the worst that can happen? It's supposed to be a good thing, but really in reality, it's actually going to make you think about what's the worst thing that could actually happen. So
Right. I
even
see.
just the
Okay.
even just the slight change of saying, well, what's the best thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Exactly.
Like,
And like that quote, things don't have to go my way for me to be okay. Because you're
yeah.
right. Maybe the result's going to be even better. Maybe it's going to be something that I haven't even thought of. And I'm just not even thinking that way because I'm so fixated on something else. Like my blinders are on, and like I'm not open to the fact that there's all these other options of things that can actually happen. So that was I think a big one for me as far as like this idea of being more flexible, with not having to control all the things, right? And not focusing so much on end results, that it keeps you from starting in the first place. I hear that a lot. I mean, especially in the nutrition and the weight loss field, I hear that so often because it's sad, right? Because unfortunately, people have gone through so many different, shortcomings or, failures with respect to diets and stuff like that, that they're already thinking of the fact that, yeah, you know what? This one's not gonna work either. Or this, I can't do this. Or there's something wrong with me. They've already like cut themselves off like at the knee, right? Or totally self-sabotage at that point. They haven't even started yet. And they're already, saying what they know the results will be. And so the idea here is then to let go of that and then be more present, focus on the things that we actually can control. So
Definitely.
yeah.
All just kind of
um
going back to mindset.
for sure, right, that it's really really interesting more and more how I see that mindset. I mean, of course nutrition's so important, of course exercise is so important, but mindset, and I tell my clients over and over, I was like, that mindset and having your that, I don't know, tough mentality. It's not saying like you have to be perfect, but really just that it's almost like a tough mentality or like a bulletproof mindset I like to share with them, is that that's the stuff that's the thing that's going to get you through and sustain for life, is that mindset. That ability to kind of like be present, not don't put so much weight on results because you can't control it. Don't focus so much on the scale. That's why I tell my clients the scale isn't the only thing that helps you, the only way that you can win. And the scale is going to change. It's going to go up, it's going to stay flat, it's going to do all these crazy things, even though you're thinking that it should be going down, down, down every week. And if we let that drive our the way that we do life and the way that we do our health, oh man, it's gonna be an endless battle for sure. Gotta like let that go.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's see. Is there any other coping strategy? I'm gonna look through my list here. I think we talked about, or maybe you talked about making a list or making like really specific steps and like a plan for how to go about things. Did you bring that up already? As
No,
far
but
as
I
like,
no, but I definitely I feel like that's a big thing is sometimes we procrastinate because we see, just like this big, big picture. And
yeah,
it's really good to kind of just like, okay, that seems like it's so far away. That seems like it's so much work, but really when you're kind of just breaking that down into smaller steps and goals, I think that's
yeah,
great. I think that's a great
yeah.
thing to do.
Yeah, that's definitely a coping strategy that, for all kinds of things, right, really helps, is breaking things down, small steps that you feel like you can, like kind of like the garage thing, like you said, even if tied in with that, it's just broken down into small enough steps that you feel like, okay, I can handle that. Like I can't see like the whole path right now. It's not quite clear, but I can actually take care of today. Like I could do, one thing today. In fact, actually, it reminds me of that podcast that we were watching yesterday about, was it The Power of One More?
Yeah.
And like, you don't have to, focus on the fact that, let's say someone with weight loss, I have 100 pounds to lose. But guess what? I can focus on like one more pound. I can focus on staying engaged in this process one more day. Like I might feel like shit right now and I'm frustrated and I don't know what the hell is going on, but I can commit to one more day, or I could commit to one more meal or whatever, just the thing that keeps you in the game. I thought that was really powerful. So I love that type of coping strategy where, it's like putting things into bite-sized um, portions to go after. That's really a good one.
That is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially kind of relating back to that episode was, so many people are living in the past that they're
Uh-huh.
not writing their future. They're basically just kind of continuing with what they're comfortable with what they've done in the past.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important to be able to kind of be like, okay, I need to grow. And if I need to grow, or if I'm going to grow, I need to get out of my comfort zone. And I think a lot of self-sabotage is just getting out of your comfort zone. And sometimes it can be really hard. It's, you're looking at the future and you're kind of going like crap, and I think this kind of relates back to one of the quotes that was in that podcast was, You can't change the season you're in. Like you
Hmm.
don't have the power to change the season you're in, no matter, what it is. Say you're in college and you have another 6 months to go and you're just like chugging along like, oh gosh. Or,
Yeah.
say you went through an injury and now you're going through recovery, or say you just started a diet and you're, a diet and a fitness plan, and it's like you're kind of dreading it and you're like, ugh. But it's like
Yeah.
that's the season that you're in, that you're, that like you can't change. Sometimes you can't change the season you're in. You don't have the power to change it, but you have the power to live that season well.
Mm, I
Um,
love that, right? Like you can't jump. Like a lot of times I think it's again back to patience, right? We want to jump to the next phase without experiencing where we are right now. Another thing I learned to kind of deal with, let's say the negative stuff and not, kind of try to numb myself out or just, resort to like hours and hours of TV watching is it's like asking yourself a different kind of question. Like if you're struggling right now, whether it's in a relationship or a business partner or partnership or your weight, nutrition, is to ask yourself, what is this meant to teach me right now? Like I'm going through this right now for a reason. I need to learn something from this. And I know that sounds like maybe like really like just, kind of I don't know, fluffy or whatever. I can't think of the word, but like how realistic is that? But it's true, because if we don't learn from the struggles that we're experiencing, we're very likely just going to keep experiencing those same struggles over and over again. So like, if you're struggling with weight loss or whatever, you're struggling with, I really can't, I'm struggling with staying consistent. Well, maybe the question is, well, what is this trying to teach me? Do I need to step up my game and how prepared I am? Am I truly setting myself up and taking the time to set myself up for success? That doesn't mean you have to devote a whole day, but am I taking even just a little bit of time, out of my days to set
mhm.
myself up so that tomorrow I can be a bit more successful than I was yesterday? I mean, those are like the hard questions to ask where you have to be totally honest, brutally honest with yourself to, like you said, step out of your comfort zone, step into discomfort, right? And by doing so, you can start building that respect, that self-respect that, you know what, I could do the damn thing. I can do this, even if it's a
Mhm.
little bit at a time, but I'm doing it.
Definitely. And I think it's building that self-respect is also going to build, your confidence. And the more that you
Mhm.
build your confidence, the more that you're going to believe in yourself, that you can get into that discomfort and you can live through it. Right. Because I feel like
Yeah.
self-sabotage is our body. It's like our body's natural reaction to like keep us alive and keep us okay and keep us, in our comfort zone. But the more that you're building your confidence in yourself and knowing that you can do all the hard things, that's where you're going to really grow. And that's where you're going to really beat that self
Yeah.
sabotage.
I would even up the ante because I think that's spot on. Is that when you do the hard things, you step out of your comfort zone, is to always be thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do something else just like this, or to keep stepping out of your comfort zone." Because what I've learned is that it's not just doing it one time. Like you have to keep doing it because, like, I remember, like, we started doing this podcast too. Like we would do a podcast and we'd feel so happy that we did it. We stepped out of our comfort zone and then we come back, whatever, like the next week, and it was like, oh, why does it feel like we just this is our first one again? It's like a muscle. We have to like constantly like work it and like flex it so that it becomes a little bit more natural. Like you can't just do one and then be done. You got to keep stepping out just a little bit more, just keep it going, and so it starts to feel a little bit, I don't know if it ever really feels totally natural, but a little bit more like, all right, I got this. I could do this. It's not a big deal, but yeah, I love
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. Because really, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to go to bed knowing that you just put in a mediocre, you know, job, or that
Yeah.
you want, like, to me, I mean, it's like, what can I do today to where I'm going to be able to sleep good tonight?
Yeah, I like that.
You know, I
Like,
literally
can
just thought of that right now.
I That's good. Yeah, you're like you're all inspired right now. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you don't want to just go through your day just for every day, just kind of like whatever, just average, vanilla. You kind of feel like, yeah, I've got something to offer this world. I've got some gifts to share, and I want to step into whatever awesomeness that I can, and do the good thing, or do good by me and do good by others, whatever that may mean for, everyone out there. But I love that. I like the fact that, when we talk about these topics, whether it's self-sabotage and, imposter phenomenon, imposter syndrome, that we share that 100% that we experience this stuff too. And maybe sometimes the more difficult part is talking about it and being, I guess, open with it. I think that well, no, I say no. I know, and I love the fact that we do that. So anyway, I'm glad. I'm glad that we touched on this topic today.
For sure, for sure. And hopefully some of the things that, we provided to the listeners today,
Mhm.
they can start implementing, whether it's, the time blocking or just setting yourself up and not numbing out at the end of the night and finding that motivation to kind of,
Yeah.
set yourself up for the next day or, whatever it may be. But yeah, I'm definitely I'm proud of this episode.
Yes, exactly. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, first of all, I want to thank you for your time for listening through all the way or all the way through and sharing this time with us. We also want to share too that it's important that you surround yourself with, uplifting and, the things that you watch, listen to are also really important. And so, like I said, if you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe so that you'll be notified for our next episode. Share with a friend. We can build our community together. Like I said, it's having a support community where we can all kind of lean on each other and help pull each other when we need that pull is really important. And so, yeah, follow us, subscribe, share with a friend, and until next time,
On
we
to the next
are
one.
out. Bye, guys.
Bye.